Welcome to the Allison Loves Math podcast. I'm super excited to introduce today's guest, Eduardo Godinez. He is a first-generation college student. First, he attended Irvine Valley College, where he worked as a math tutor and as an embedded tutor in several of my classes, like a lot of my classes. And you were in my pre-algebra class, my intermediate algebra class, my college algebra class. And honestly, if you ask any of the students in my classes, they will tell you that Eduardo was a huge part of their success in my math class. So after Irvine Valley College, Eduardo transferred to UCI as a math major and is graduating this June online and applying to grad school. And the thing about Eduardo is that he loves math. He loves math, and he's very passionate about helping students succeed in math. And I am so excited, Eduardo, to have you here today to provide some advice and guidance for other first-generation college students who want to major in math. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here too.
Cool. So let's start by, tell me a little bit about where your passion for math came from. What got you to be a math major?
So it all really started when I was in high school. Definitely when I was in my senior year of high school, I was taking a math class that was mostly aimed towards students who were freshmen or sophomores, being so that I failed a lot of math classes in high school and had to retake them. But my teacher was like a very big advocate of wanting me to be a part of her class. I didn't really like math. I like I said, I had already failed it a couple of times, but she said, I know you know this stuff. I know that you know what you're doing, and I need help, I guess, teaching my other students. So I would go in during her 7th block and tutor some of the students that were struggling more than I was. And that's when I realized that teaching math was something that I was really passionate about. I really enjoyed when I would just sit down with a student and we'd just be talking about, like, how do we even simplify square roots? How do we rationalize the denominator? And that's when I realized, like, oh, I know how to do this stuff. We have to think about the pairs and we have to take them out of the castle, and making those analogies to me is just really fun. So at the end of the year, she decided to tell me, well, why don't you apply for community college? I don't think that you should go straight into a 4-year. And she recommended to me Irvine Valley College. And I really didn't know what I wanted to major in at this point, but she said, I've seen you and I know that you love math. I know that you get a kick out of teaching it, and I think that you would be a great math student. So that's kind of where my journey began. And like you said, after in the introduction, I ended up applying a year after, while being at IVC, to be a part of like the math center as a actual math tutor. That's where I met you in your embedded tutoring classes. And then 2 years later, I've now transferred to UCI and I'm about to graduate. So
yay!
That's my story.
I'm excited for you, Eduardo.
Thank you.
And, I will add that I think that your story, especially about, how you failed math in high school and now you're this incredible math student that's helping so many students at IVC. It has been so inspiring to so many of the students in my classes, because you're always so encouraging. You're always like, look, I failed math like back in high school.
Yeah.
Look at these classes I'm taking now. Like,
I love telling that story to the students, because they've a lot of the students that I've worked with in your classrooms have said, yeah, I've failed too in high school. Mm-hmm. I don't get math. And I'm like, you know what? I didn't either at some point, but it's really just about putting all your mind to it, putting all your effort and persevering through the tough things. So.
Yes. And I think it's so helpful for students, especially, like you said, so many of the students who have come into my classes have failed those classes before. And there's definitely like a mindset, I feel like, for students who have failed math in the past. They think that, all of that advice of just sort of like try and figure out, well, it doesn't pertain to me because I failed, and they don't necessarily don't necessarily have seen somebody who was maybe in their shoes once, right? Succeed and figure it out. And anyways, you're just, your story, as well as like your encouragement, has just helped so many students in my classes.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk advice for first-generation college students. You're at this point where you've majored in math and you're graduating. Sort of looking back at your experiences in math, what are some pieces of advice for students who kind of want to follow in your footsteps?
Well, my biggest piece of advice is definitely you have to build your own community, and that means relationships with people in community college or wherever setting it really may be. Um, for me, this was kind of difficult at first because I was stepping into something new in a college setting. I've only known the high school setting, so it was a lot different. I didn't get to talk to my peers as much, but I realized that that was on me, that I had to really go out and put myself out there and to not really be afraid to speak up about the things that I'm struggling with, because there's definitely other people in my community that are struggling with the same thing. I had to also talk with, at some point, some of like my IBC counselor, because I was like, I don't really know if like this is really the pathway I should take, but they reassured that uh, you are doing the best you can right now, and that just to enjoy the journey that's gonna happen. Um, Also talking with my professors, if I learned something really hard in calculus, and I was like, I need more help with this. So I asked her if she could stay after class and just kind of go over the proof, because I didn't understand it. And she said, well, why do you want to look at the proof? And I said, because I don't really understand, like, what's actually happening here with, I think it was the fundamental theorem of calculus, like in Calc 1. And she showed me the proof of that. Oh, okay, we integrate, we have f of b minus f of a. And that kind of putting myself out there, like asking and building my community with professors, with students, with a counselor, with anyone on campus, was a really big help for me, because as a first gen college student, I can't really like ask my family members or ask someone like an older brother that's already gone through the same thing. Um, it it's something that I'm really grateful that I had, and that I'm happy that I put myself out there. So if you're a first gen college student, definitely don't be afraid to speak up. Don't, you have to build a community. So yeah.
Those are great pieces of advice. I'm so sorry. I've got to pause for 1 second because my dog fell asleep and is having a weird dream and is yapping a whole bunch. So let
Okay,
me
no worries.
All right, we are back. Sorry, we had a quick intermission there with the dogs. But we're back talking about math. So I wanted to reiterate one of the points that you made, which is really good and I think really important, because you talked about asking your teacher questions in your calculus class, right? And I think that's something that lots of math majors struggle with, right? Because they think, oh gosh, if I'm going to be a math major, if I'm going to be good enough at math to major in math, that means I've got to be able to do it all on my own, and I've got to be able to do it without asking questions.
Yeah,
And
100%.
your advice is so good. You have to be able to ask questions, right?
Yeah,
Part of
100%.
being a math major, right, is recognizing when you need help, right? Recognizing when asking questions is the shortest path to success to helping you figure things out. So definitely don't feel like you've got to do everything all on your own. The support system, and that being able to ask questions and find teachers and peers that you can ask questions of, that's really important.
As soon as your understanding just starts to lack, or you find yourself doubting yourself and what you're doing, that's
Mhm.
when that's the point when you really need to ask questions.
Mhm.
It's definitely something that I struggled with. I'm sure a lot of other, like you said, a lot of other math majors struggle with, because we think, oh, we're supposed to be like smart people. And no, in any community, really, it doesn't have to be just math. You have to be asking questions. It's the safe thing to do. It's the thing that's gonna make you grow as a person.
Right, right. And and just to sort of add to that too, I guess, I think there are some math teachers that might make you feel stupid for asking questions, right? And if that's the case in your math class, there's always other places too where you can go ask questions, right? Maybe you have a previous math teacher. You can
Yeah,
always go and ask them questions, even if they're not teaching your class. There might be a tutoring center, and obviously tutors vary too in personality also, but you can
yeah,
always just, part of building that community, right, is
yeah.
having people sort of in your back pocket that you can go to ask
Mhm.
questions when you have them.
The more people you talk with, the more your mind is just going to grow, because everyone has a different way of saying things, and like
Mhm.
everyone is really their own unique self. So you have to be able to pull things from all walks of life, really.
Right, right. Cool. All right, and a big part of your support system was actually the peers that you met at the tutoring center, right? So tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that and how that helped you.
Yeah, so as a student, I was there my first year. I was just a student, and going there, I was able to meet up with other students of mine or other peers that were in my classes, either taking the same class as me or in a class just right above me, but we were the same age. And I felt that there it was a really great way to connect with people and just talk about math, talk about the struggles we had, and build a community. Um, Now, though, as I transitioned into being a math tutor there, I get to actually interact and be that kind of guidance and support system for other students, which to me is really beautiful because I knew that I was there when I was in their shoes, right? And so now I get to think about like, well, where they're coming from and their questions, and I get to see that I had a lot of those same questions too, and I know sometimes exactly the right way to answer them. And providing that support system for the students and even the professors that work there too, I got to chat with them and talk with them and kind of get advice for what is my next step as in wanting to become a math professor eventually. So I definitely the IVC Math Center was a great way to build my community.
Right. Oh, definitely. And, and I'll add too, just because I'm always advocating that everybody becomes a math tutor because I think it's such a great way to strengthen your own foundations in math. And it also gets you used to talking about math, explaining math, which is also really important for being a math major. So I think there are a lot of different skills that can be gained from being a math tutor. So if you are thinking about being a math
Absolutely.
major, like totally go check out the tutoring center and see if they're hiring because it's a
Almost every community college has one, right?
yeah. And then on the flip side, if you're struggling in math, right, or struggling in one of your math classes, go check out the math center because they've got free tutoring. And one of the things is that I always tell students is that I came from a background in tutoring, right? So before I was a community college math professor, I tutored and I charged over $100 an hour for tutoring. All right. And there are lots of tutors out there who charge over $100 an hour for tutoring. Eduardo is better than any of those guys. Okay. And you're getting tutors like that quality for free. So don't think
Yeah.
that just because tutoring is free, that it's not really good. There are people who are paying over $100 an hour for honestly tutors that aren't as good sometimes as the ones that you
Yeah.
find in the math centers.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
right.
and another thing too is that I've also had so many students come to me and say, "Oh, but I went to the math tutor once, or to a math tutor or the math center once, and they talked to one person and they thought that one person wasn't helpful, so they gave up on the whole thing
Yep.
completely."
Yeah,
And I think that
that's definitely something that happens all the time.
all the time. And so I guess what I'd say is every math center at every community college has an Eduardo, right? They've all got somebody there who is really helpful, right? And really genuine. It's not going to make you feel stupid for asking questions, and is going to help you out a lot. And it's just a matter of finding your Eduardo at that math center. All right. So if it's not the first person, like go back again and work with somebody else. And if it's not the second person, go back and find a third, because I promise you, if you're looking for it, right, and if you take it upon yourself to find somebody, like you'll find that person that you connect with and who can really help you out.
Yeah, and you can learn really anything from anyone. And maybe that one bad experience, there is something that you can still pull from that and really grow from that and think, well, why did that happen? And think, okay, like there is a little something to learn from that interaction with that person. And they may not be the worst person or to tutor or anything
That's
like
true.
that.
Yes.
It may have just been the interaction, that one single interaction. And I encourage those people that say, I'll never go back to that tutor, to do it, to go back and talk with them, because everyone has their little different areas that they're better at and explaining.
Mm-hmm.
And that may just be the topic that that you guys were conversating about may have just been kind of difficult. So
Right.
it really just depends, and there's always something to learn.
Exactly. Cool. Cool. All right. So other pieces of advice.
So my second piece of advice is really that you really do have to accept who you are and that you're a unique person. You got to embrace yourself, right? Um, for me, I always really struggled with the fact that I needed to compare myself with other people. And this came a lot too from my family and my culture. They always say, "Oh, look at what your cousin's doing, and see what they're doing. They're doing awesome in school, grade school, whatever it may have been." And I always tell my mom, "Stop comparing me. I hate it when you compare me." But I knew that in her mind, she wasn't trying to compare me. She was saying, "Look and learn from these people." And that's important. That's the same thing with building your community. You got to learn from other people because they're already some steps ahead of you. So to see and get that insight is only going to help you, but only if you can see it from the mindset of, I am learning from this person. I'm not trying to compare myself that, oh, I'm trying to be better. No, like you want to learn from these people and implement that into who you are as a person. You can add to that to make yourself your own unique person. So
Yes.
um
Absolutely. It's growth mindset, right? It's
yes,
focusing on your own development, right? And everybody's been on different journeys and is at different places in their journeys. So it doesn't make sense to compare yourself to other people, but you can compare yourself to how you were yesterday, right? And are you making progress, right? Are you getting closer to your goals? Even if you hit a roadblock, right? If there's mistakes or something bad happened or there was a terrible test, right? Did you pick yourself up from that? And so compare yourself to yourself yesterday, right? You just focus
exactly.
on your progress, right? Not
Yeah,
comparing yourself.
and learn from it. That's the most important thing, is really
Yes.
the comparison is a small part, but learning from what you did to compare yourself is really the important part. And I saw that a lot when I was a student at the Math Center, just watching other tutors. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
try and compare myself. I try to learn, how did they speak to the person? How did they ask that question? And how am I able to ask that question to maybe another peer during the time, or when I eventually become a math tutor, how am I gonna tutor that? How am I going to convey that information? Even teaching students in your class, I found myself all the time not comparing myself a little bit to the students because I knew I was already in their shoes, but also learning from where they had come from. I learned that, well, they struggled the same way I did with maybe a factoring method. So I tried to teach them a bunch of different ways of, like, you don't have to do that cross method or whatever. There's this cool method I found on the internet that maybe you guys like, and some students liked it, some students didn't, but they ended up learning from that, and I ended up learning that not every student thinks the same exact way. And that was the beauty in really being in your class, was that I got to just learn so much and compare myself, but mostly learn from your students.
Right, right. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Next piece of advice.
My next piece of advice for students who are first gen, and I know that this one is probably going to hit really home, is that it's okay to fail. And I know that, for me in the Latino culture, it's like we always have to be successful and, just put our head forward and just succeed, do 100% every time. But that's not realistic. That's not something that happens every time. The progress toward earning a degree is very difficult for someone that doesn't have that support system within their family. They have to, again, build their community elsewhere, but at the same time, it's an uncomfortable situation. Um, Failing my first class at UCI and just being, I guess, put in a position where I was like, I can't believe, like, I'm dishonoring my family. This is terrible. But really, it gave me a chance to look back and figure out that this was something that I'm not, like, too comfortable with, and that's okay. It's okay to be in those uncomfortable, icky situations where you fail, because you just have to pick yourself back up and persevere. Just push through it and try again. I've since then retaken that class, and I got a pretty good score again. And now I'm like, wow, there was so much to learn from failing that class, and so much to learn from retaking that class, that now I see, like, my mistakes and what I could do now to learn and compare myself to my past self and become a better person. So
Mm-hmm. Yes. No, there's so many important pieces of advice there, right? One is to not let a setback like that, make you give up, right? Two is, you said, learn from your mistakes, right? So
Yeah,
so if you fail a class, right, or a test, and whatever that failure is, don't approach it the same way the next time, right? Make sure that you're changing what you're doing. So if you didn't have the support in that class, right, the second time you take it, make sure you've got a support system, right? Take some extra time
exactly.
at the very beginning to figure out who that support system is going to be. And yeah, that's great advice for
Yeah,
all math majors, right? Because gosh, if you take math long enough, we all hit that class that challenges us at a whole new level that we never expected, right?
yeah,
And that's part of being a math major.
yeah, totally. I 100% agree with you. And really that also just came with, again, finding those within my community to look up to. That, in that case, once I retook the class, I looked towards more to my peers. I realized that I wasn't really talking as much with the students in my class who were taking the same material. And once I did, I realized, wow, this material is becoming easier because we're all putting our heads together. We're all thinking and trying to study together. And it really cut down on a lot of the work that was for this really hard class. And
Yes.
even looking towards other professors, like past professors, I'd ask them, I'd say, okay, I really don't understand like what's happening in this section, and I didn't the first time, but I need some help. And they had some really great insight. And pulling things from a bunch of different people will help me a lot into passing this class.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, this just reminds me back when I took, what was it, complex analysis, maybe? That was one of the classes that really threw me, and it was really hard. And it was one of those things where, I was looking at how much time it was taking to get through like a one homework assignment, right? And I was like, oh my God, there are not enough hours in the week. And I remember that was one of those classes where I doubled down on trying to find people to study with. And I literally and it was sort of awkward because sometimes in math classes, people don't work together all that much, and it's like there's some math classes where it's like everybody's going through everything in isolation, and if that's the case, like don't wait for study groups to come to you. You just create it yourself.
Yeah,
I asked every single person in the class if they wanted to have a study group, and sure enough, like a third of the class ended up coming,
yeah.
and we all saved so much time by doing all of the schoolwork together. And not that it was easy, even with like a third of the class working
No, I
together.
mean, really, it's like how
Um,
many mathematicians does it take to finish a homework problem? And if it's complex analysis, you're going to need
it's a third
a
of the
lot
class
of them.
apparently.
Yeah, the entire class. Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. So no, and yeah, even with that class, right? It totally came down to building the community, and yeah, and in that one too, I felt like it was weird. I was super out of my comfort zone talking to people I did not know at all and asking them to study with me, but it got me through the class and in a lot less time than I thought it would.
Yeah. You built your community,
I
which is
built
awesome.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Oh man. All right. Let's see. I can't remember. Was there anything else? I think there was one more, right?
Oh, my last point is to just say that you have to enjoy what you're doing. You have to enjoy and love the process of being a first gen college student, and that's someone that's being a math or becoming a math major, or sorry, majoring in math. You're the first to do this. I'm the first to do this in my family. No one else, I don't know anyone else that's majored in math in my family. And I, now looking back at all these years that I've spent dedicating my time to doing this, I think that I'm like, wow, this is amazing. But there have been times too where, I kind of really didn't enjoy the process. I didn't enjoy learning this complex, difficult proof-based math that I am right now, because I found it really hard and really difficult and, kind of icky, right? Um, and my advice to that is that if you aren't enjoying something, that you should really seek help from your community, right? Find and do that early enough. But if you can't do it early enough, you need to find your passion, right? Find what you love doing, because if you don't see yourself doing that 10 years along the line, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. I enjoy and I love teaching. I loved when I was able to teach in your class, and like I love seeing the students' faces light up, and that was fun for me. But not as much learning like these proof-based math. So it kind of gave me an idea of what I should be focusing on. And for me, that's definitely the education behind math.
Right. No, that's such a good point. There are so many different areas of math, honestly, to focus on, right?
Yeah.
And so I think part of being a math major is you're taking these different math classes, and part of that is discovering which area within math you love. I mean, I was the same way, complex analysis, not my thing at all. Statistics, loved it,
Yeah.
and it's like they're both hard in totally different ways, but it's just sort of like there's the hard where you're like, okay, I'm getting through this class because I have to, right? And then there's this like other class that's just as hard, but you're like, but I love that difficulty. I love, digging into data, right? And making sense of that. Like it's the hard problem that you love. So keep an eye out for, those challenging classes that you do love, right? And that you want more of,
Yeah.
So that's where you should go.
Exactly. Yeah. I definitely have looked back upon these last 2 years that were kind of online at UCI, and really I think I found my passion, and that's definitely for me teaching. For others, it was looking at data science. For others, maybe math education in like a different sense where it's in the high school sense. For me, I like teaching more in like the college level and like older secondary education. But for my friend, he's all about teaching the little kids. He loves being with those younglings in high school or in middle school, elementary, doesn't matter to him. He just likes seeing the way that they light up and they collaborate with each other. So, you have to find your passion. And for me, I think I have. So
that's perfect. Yes. And I think that is great advice, right? Whatever you're doing, you want to love it, right? Whatever you love, you want to do more of, life is actually very short, right? I know sometimes it doesn't feel like that when you're sort of just in it, right? Working day in and day out in all these math classes and stuff. But, ultimately at the end of the day, or at the end of it all, right? You want to look back and say that you spent your time doing stuff that you love and exploring things that you love, learning things that you love. So definitely it's good advice, Eduardo. Make sure you enjoy the process. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was wonderful. I'm so happy that I got a chance to interview you on the podcast, and it was fantastic to see you. I missed you a lot this year.
I know. Hopefully I can be there for your class in the fall, right? You're teaching statistics, you said?
Statistics with the co-rec support. So I'm
awesome.
Crossing my fingers that I'll get you as an embedded tutor for my class.
Oh, totally. I mean, all I have to do is just mention it to Joel, and he'll be like, you do it. You go ahead and
all right. So yes, Joel, when you're listening to this, hopefully it's an official request on the podcast.
Yes,
Eduardo
Joel,
back
if
in my
you're
classroom.
listening.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this. This was a wonderful conversation, and you've been such an inspiration to the students in my class, and I know to everybody that you've worked with and helped in the tutoring center, and and now this as well is honestly something that I think can help a lot of students who listen to this, who you might not ever meet, but you're doing great work and helping so many students in math, Eduardo.
I'm very happy to be a part of the math community. I think I enjoy being a part of this community. So to anyone else listening to this, I'm very happy that you're probably going on the same journey that I am, being a math major, possibly. And I just want to tell you, enjoy that process, build that community. It's okay to fail. And what was my other point? Oh yeah, you just accept yourself, embrace yourself, because you're amazing.
Yes, totally. And stick with it. You've got this.
Stick with it.
Totally. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for listening today. I will see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you.